Good morning to everybody. The ones who don't know me, my name is Salim. I'm the director for Smart Life. We do a lot of work around digital and supporting both individuals and organizations in developing their digital capabilities. So the pandemic has obviously caused many challenges to us as organizations. And one of those challenges, the biggest challenge, is engaging with our stakeholders. So, how do we reach out and engage with our service users online? Because we are now living in a digital world. So, engaging and reaching out to service users, whatever our industry is, whatever our size of organization, is absolutely critical. So, the session today is all about that. And I'm very pleased to mention that we have got Jonathan Gilbert, who will be delivering today's session. For those who don't know Jonathan, Jonathan will be giving a quick introduction to himself. But Jonathan is an expert within this field. This workshop today is a starter for a number of workshops that we have got lined up over the next couple of months. It's all about the digital world we're living in. We've got a selection of workshops around user engagement, and this is the very first one in user engagement. We will be advertising and promoting future workshops. The next one is next week, and there's almost one every week. There's a whole directory of workshops coming out, but if we concentrate more on today, what I'm going to do now, without any further ado, is to switch over and introduce Jonathan. But just to remind you that it's being recorded today. If we keep our videos off and microphones on mute, that will help. I'm sure there will be questions that people will have, and there's an opportunity at the end of the workshop for questions and answers, which Jonathan and myself will be more than happy to answer to the best of our abilities. There is a chat panel if you want to include anything in there. But I would strongly suggest if you've got anything, unless it's a burning issue, please keep your questions to the end where we'll be able to answer them. So without much further ado, let me just switch over to Jonathan and give him control now of this workshop. And over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks very much, Salim, and good morning, everybody. Let me fire this presentation up for you. So, right, let's go back to that. So, yeah, would help if I did it in the right order. Okay, so yeah, good morning, everybody. So I'm Jonathan, and I've been doing digital for about 10 years now. So it's a little bit of my background. The thing that isn't on there is actually how Salim and I met, which is really via the Good Things Foundation, which some of you may have heard of, and I'm a consultant for them for about the same 6-7 years standing, really. So my background is as a trainer, and I'm also qualified as a business advisor. But one of my big specialisms is around small charity digital, community voluntary sector digital, which I've been doing 10, 11, 12 years now. And over that period, I've supported hundreds of organisations, including over 100 for the Lloyds Bank Foundation, of which I'm still a consultant. So quite a lot of experience. I don't call myself an expert, but I have, that's for others to judge, a lot of experience to draw upon. So we're also, as well as the recording, going to let you have the slides. So what I would say is just concentrate on the kind of content, and I'll use the slides really as an aid memoir to kind of say other stuff as well. So, you know, sit back and enjoy that. You'll get the recording, you'll get the slides. Do make some notes along the way, if that helps you. Definitely at the end, just like if we were all in the room, like the old pre-pandemic style. So that's coming a little bit. So what I'm going to run through here, just a few things. So we've got an hour. I'm not going to cram too much in. I'm going to give you enough food for thought. Get you thinking about this topic for your work. So we're going to have a look at the channels you can use for marketing from a user engagement point of view. We're going to look at some techniques, particularly something we call the 3 M's of marketing. Very simple but very effective. I'm going to talk about some success factors based on my last 10 years of really actually how you do engagement and make it work. A bit about a plan, because that's one of the success factors, and then hopefully some time for Q&A, and we can have a discussion about that. I'm letting people in. There's people joining as we so I'm kind of multitasking, Salim here. Okay, so that's what I'm going to cover. So let's get stuck in. So I'm going to draw upon a leading study of digital here for some of the kind of baseline. This is called Digital 2021. It's really very authoritative study. It's something you can access yourself if you Google Digital 2021. There is an awful lot of information. There's country reports. So whichever country in the world you're interested in terms of audience, you can have a look at. And every country is different, obviously, but we're obviously concentrating on the UK today. But a very authoritative study that's produced by some leading experts. One of them, some of you may have heard of, which is Hootsuite, which is a big social media agency. And there's 2 slides here I'm going to start with, because actually this is a study, so this is a contemporary study of people that use the internet, age 16 to 64. How do people come across an organization? I know it says brand, but everyone's a brand to a certain extent in the online world. So this applies to community voluntary organizations, charities, public agencies, etc. And I think this is very telling. Perhaps some people, when I've done this, used this slide before, people think it might be social medias at the top. It isn't. It up top of the pile in terms of how people discover a brand and organization is actually through search. That's predominantly going to be Google. So a third of users, the primary method is a search. This really stresses the importance, obviously, of websites in particular, and within that, something we call search engine optimization. We'll come back to that in a little bit, but it's not social media. I'm not going to go through all these. Okay, you might be seeing ads on TV. Okay, what I'm going to say on that is, television is still there. I see a lot of small organizations, charities, community organizations getting content on TV. And, I've known small charities, get onto the news, and result is they've engaged more service users, raised funds and stuff. So, don't dismiss it. Interesting that word of mouth is still strong there in 3rd place. And bear in mind, this is a survey of internet users and how they discover a brand or a product or a service. It's still there. The old-fashioned thing that's been around for hundreds of years is still is very much in the mix. But I will say that people draw upon other aspects of online and digital, and I think we'll all perhaps be familiar with have you seen this on Facebook, or have you seen this on Instagram, or seen this on Twitter? People refer to the online world in their word of mouth communications. So they're not in, they're dependent to some extent. They're not isolated as aspects of how people actually discover a brand, an organization. The flip side is this one. So, which is actually, how do people stay engaged? How do they keep informed with what somebody is doing? And you'll see here, I was even surprised myself with this, you know, way out in front is not social media or email, it's the website. And I think what this is illustrating to me, it's confirming a trend over the last couple of years, of which is we're seeing a resurgence of the website and the role. Some of us that have been around for a while, Salim will probably kind of appreciate this. You know, at one point we thought social media was going to rule the roost and was going to dominate absolutely everything, but it's not. You know, I think potentially it's peaked. I'm not saying it's not important, but you know, in the UK, you know, we may have peaked in terms of social media. It's not going to take over the whole world here. So the role of your website is still incredibly important. You can see from this contemporary study. Again, I'm not going to go through all these. You'll get the slides. You can look at the source material yourself and explore a little bit more. But second place, you know, a quarter of people, it's a video. You know, the video age, video killed the radio star. We've been at it 30, 40 years now. You know, and you know, it's certainly a feature of how people stay informed. What I will say from my own experience working with small charities is I think a good photo equally is as powerful from an engagement point of view. So yes, video is important, but don't worry in too much about, oh, well, you haven't got the capability or the funds to produce great videos. If you get that money and you can, brilliant. If you haven't, don't worry. You know, good photos from a smartphone can equally provide a good base for engagement. Also there, I just want to flag up, you know, nearly a quarter of people is an email. And this is another aspect that we're seeing come back in recent years, a little bit of a resurgence of email marketing. And I think both the website and email are partly a response from some of the issues we face with social media, and being at the mercy of the algorithms, the computer programs that run them, and really filter out a lot of content that small organizations produce. So these are a website and email are things you've got far more control over, ways you can connect with your audience, your desired audience, in a stronger way. This may be or may not be surprising some of you. You know, I'm not saying dump social media, but you really need to put it in perspective here. And this is a message that's changed. I wouldn't be saying this 2-3 years ago. Okay, so keeping it simple. This is kind of a slide I've used many times. I'm sure Salim's actually probably seen it before, but it's a good one. I've yet to find a better one. And it sums up in a very simple visual way of your kind of starter for 6 of what engagement looks like, using a combination of these 6 methods to engage an audience. Let me just run through them quickly. Social media, I'm going to unpack that in the next slide a little bit more, but you know, yes, you need some. It's about being in the right place for the people you are seeking to engage, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Second up, search engine optimization. This is essentially how you use your website and how it performs in search engines. So this is around 2 things. This is around the content on your website, which is increasingly very visual and low text, text, get my teeth in, text, not tech. And also technical settings in your administration of your website. So the 2 things go hand in hand, very important. Paid search is certainly a factor for any small organization that's wanting to engage an audience. And I think the starting point is Facebook ads. It's boosting Facebook content. This is the most cost-effective way of engaging. So yesterday I was talking to a charity who's given it a go, and that they were spending 15 pence per click through to their website from an engagement point of view, and they're delighted with that. You know, it's comparing it to previous spend on different types of marketing. This is actually a very cheap way and a very effective way to target an audience. There are other things here in paid search. You can, as a registered charity, get Google AdWords for free, but not for the faint-hearted, I will say, but for people, you know, who've got some technical ability and some time. And I hear you're saying that's none of you who've got any time. I'm sure is the case, but you know, be remiss of me to not mention that there are tools there that can actually pay for your paid search, if that makes sense. We've got influencer marketing, and what I've reduced this one to saying is just two words: is Marcus Rashford. And you know, you don't need to think any more beyond that. What I think is an inspirational young man who's actually using his power, his brand, for good with other, you know, with charitable causes and good causes. You know, the role that an influencer can have in reaching an audience is massive. But I've seen lots of charities do it. You know, it's not about necessarily A-list celebrities like that. You know, I've seen people use prominent figures and local celebrities to good effect to engage an audience as well. And I would say it is part of a successful engagement strategy for anybody, and anybody can do it. But you do need, I would say, you do need a reasonable website. You need some social media, because that's one of the first things an influencer will look at in terms of actually, what's this organization about? You know, are they kind of with it to a certain extent? You know, have I got stuff that I can use? Is there stuff that I can share from their social media? These are the sort of things they'd be asking themselves. So you've got to have a certain level of credibility, but that's obtainable for virtually everybody. Email, or should say email marketing. I'm using somebody else's slide here. Is the area that I find when I start working with people is the area that they're not doing much of or at all. As soon as they start doing it, they start really engaging an audience. And I've had a few examples recently. It offers one of the best conversion rates. And what we mean by that is for every one you put out, or every 100 you put out, you're going to get more of a return. Definitely more than pumping out something on Facebook or Instagram. It's a direct way. There's an art to it. And, you know, a little plug in, Salim, we've got a session on email marketing coming up in a couple of weeks. You know, so there's certain tricks of the trade there. I bet, you know, if we did a poll here, a lot of you won't be doing it. But I would say if it's one thing you take away today, you know, think about your email marketing strategy, because most people aren't doing it to a sufficient level to actually engage an audience and re-engage them, keep them informed. Last, and certainly not least, is the whole idea of content. So content really is the cross-cutter. Without content, you've got none of the others. You've got no content for an influencer to share. You've got nothing to say on social media. It's the key thing. And it's something you need to think about how you produce. And I would encourage clients to think about a content hour or content hours every week, where you actually think about your strategy and you produce stuff that's relevant and engaging for your target audiences. It really is the key aspect to think about, and it is something that people sometimes struggle with. But good content, you know, is about some good visuals. It's about some good photos. If you're not the world's best photographer, there are good sites out there that you can source royalty-free images. That's important. You know, don't just do a Google. Like a client, I had great images. Where did you get them? I just Googled them. You can't use them probably. You know, they're copyright. You'll get into hot water like the charity I had, who got a £1,500 bill from Getty Images because they used one of their images once. Yes, they track these things. you've got to use royalty-free search engines. They're fine, but no substitute for your own photos. I'm going to say that, but you can use a mix, and most people, including myself, do that. Okay, so I was saying we're going to just kind of flip onto social a little bit more, and this is the kind of the picture in terms of audience share of the different platforms, and you can see, just way out in front is Facebook on a global stage. Absolute leader, and something that's been growing year on year, despite the controversies or that they face, and there certainly are some. It doesn't seem to impact the usability and the audience size at all. So that may not always be the case, but as we speak now, Facebook is absolutely dominant. You've got in second place YouTube. Now, some may not regard it as social media. I'm a bit ambivalent towards it. I use YouTube, but it's low from an engagement point of view in terms of people being able to comment, but certainly in terms of views, it's absolutely massive. And I'm not going to argue with experts like Hootsuite. They say it's social media. I'll say, okay, fine, it is. So Facebook, YouTube, I'm not going to go all through them. Next couple are Messenger. So this is the role of kind of direct messaging in your engagement. WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, guess what? They're both owned by Facebook. And they all recently went down, as we know, 2 weeks ago. So a little lesson there is don't put all your eggs in one basket. If somebody goes offline, you've got nothing to fall on. But I mean, people might be interested. Again, you can look at the slide when you get it in more detail and explore it. There's different country versions of this, but they're broadly in line. I mean, interesting here. You may say, where's Twitter? This is a very good point. It's down at the bottom, and I'm going to say this as somebody, that used to love Twitter, but it has slid. There's no doubt about it. Instagram's in there, but not as massive as some would have us believe. It has very strong niches. It's a very visual platform. It's a more younger platform to be considered if you are your audience, your user group, your customers are under age 30. If most of your customers are in that group, you strongly need to think about Instagram. But if they're not, and you struggle with the visual kind of content, maybe not for you. That's my guide on Instagram. But some of the other things, some of the niche things, and I think, your approach should be not jumping on the latest thing, because in 10 years I've seen, flash in the pan, things come and go. At the moment, it's TikTok is kind of the flavor of the month. But actually, you see from an audience point of view, actually, it's it's a small slither actually of what Facebook is. And 2 years ago, it was Snapchat, and that's fallen off a cliff. So all of these things take a lot of your time and energy. So you've really got to kind of think about how much can I really do? Is there one or two things I can do? That's probably more realistic than trying to do all of them, because most people actually struggle to do that. Okay, so successful audiences, successful organizations, are basically doing a mix of these things here in front of you. And really, how much you do and how many of them you do is really a matter of resource, which is mainly person time to actually do all of these things. This is the critical thing, which we'll come back to in a moment. But one thing to help you cut through from an engagement point of view is actually thinking, and this is the 3 M's of marketing, by the way. It's a simple overlay. Is for market C audience, and I encourage you to kind of really think in a detail of who the audience is. You know, general public just won't cut it, because actually very few people, unless you're, you know, producing bread, you know, or something like that, is actually the general public. For most of us, it's a far more specific group of audiences. You know, it could be, you know, men in their 50s of Irish descent, or it could be young Muslim women. You know, these are the levels you've got to think about. That's your starting point at the top. Who is my audience in detail? Which are my priorities, actually? Which ones are my audiences am I not actually engaging, or which ones do I need to keep engaged for future purposes? And this will help you prioritize through your strategy, but also into detail, such as things like Facebook ads, the development of email lists, the type of content you use, you know, is really important. The visuals, you know, if you're looking to engage, you know, a young Muslim audience, then the imagery should be of young Muslims. I know it sounds very obvious, but believe me, I come across people that don't do it, and then they wonder why they're having you know, issues. So the next point then is, when you can think about your audience, then is, well, what's the message? Actually, why am I seeking to engage them? For what purpose? Am I looking to recruit them to a program? Am I looking for them to volunteer? Am I looking for them to donate? Perhaps all of those things and more. But, you know, what's the message? You know, and sometimes I find people think, well, actually, we've got nothing to say. That's fine. Well, don't say anything then until you've got something to say. Sounds a bit obvious, but don't just, you know, pump stuff out for the sake of it. That is not engaging. It will actually be counterproductive to your process. The audience will look at it and think, why have I got this email? It says the same stuff as it said last week and the week before. It can really turn people off. Okay, simple tool. This one's a bit more complicated, and you might not see all of the detail here. It's fine. Have a look at it when you get it. But the general thrust of this, and it's called the user journey, so it's kind of germane to what we're talking about today, or the customer journey. It's also known as that. But it's a concept in marketing and communication that's widely used, and essentially is people interact with something, you know, over a period of time. They do different things at different points in time. It's not a one-hit wonder. Engagement is a process of where you're going to do all sorts of things. You know, it's about how your website looks and performs for that audience. Has it got those right visuals to it? Have you got the right settings in your SEO? What does your social media look like? Have you got displays in your venues as people come back to kind of physical? You know, have you got a digital display? You know, what's your brand saying? Have you got a loyalty program? Have you got an email list? You know, these are all points. One thing isn't going to do it. You know, you need a combination for any audience to engage and to re-engage and keep them engaged. But it's getting the right balance in terms of frequency, in terms of how much you can produce without being repetitive, and you know, not overload somebody. There's a fine art. There's a science to that. Okay. I'm just going to whiz through some success factors. These are mine, kind of, but they're kind of filtered through other people's views and then filtered back through my own experience. And there's 7 here, and these are essential for good engagement. So the first one is have some objectives. Why are you engaging? You know, what's the purpose? It may be obvious, it may not be, and it's probably different for each group of people that you're seeking to engage. This is really your starting point, you know, and if you haven't got a why, you've got, you know, just focus on the ones you have got a why. If you haven't got a why, you don't need to do it. Does that sound a bit too simple? You can have too many. So, you know, a happy kind of 3, 4, 5 is a good kind of number to have in terms of your objectives for your marketing. And you do this really typically for like a 12-month window. So, if you're thinking now, what's your objectives for 2022? What do we actually need to do? What's our priorities? Because there's only so much of us, so much time. Actually, what do we really, really need to do? There may be a particular audience you need to engage. You may need to raise some funds. There could be a mix of those things. Okay. Still people joining, Salim here. Somebody fresh here. Okay. Next up, the audience focus is absolutely essential to your work. It needs to be ongoing. You need to have a systematic approach to this, because a lot of these tools, email marketing platforms like MailChimp are good. Your website will give you statistics. Facebook is superb, actually. Facebook ads, in terms of giving you a breakdown on gender and age and location, and phenomenal. So you can get data, you can profile the audience, and it helps you decide: am I in the right places? How am I doing? Am I actually engaging? Is this post actually engaging? Is this email engaging? Because the data will tell you. If you follow some of the tips in terms of the content production, then it will stand you in good stead. So critical, they're all critical, these. This is another area that people trip up on, which is not putting enough time into producing content. So if you come to a Friday and think, oh no, we've not done any social media, and you bash something out, it's going to look exactly that you've bashed something out on a Friday afternoon, which is really not great from an audience engagement point of view. People often don't resource production, and if it's only an hour you can spare, okay, that's okay, but it means you've got limitations what you can produce. If I bring up the next one, which is very germane to this today, and I had an example last week of a charity up in Yorkshire who were doing great content, but really good content, and they said, we're not getting much from Facebook. Well, let's have a look. And they had people commenting on the posts, and they weren't responding. So there's no, oh, well, we're busy. I said, yes, but your content's lovely. I can't fault it. It's really nice. It looks great. But actually, you're shooting yourself in the foot here, because you're not responding to people's queries about, your content. So kind of why bother? You're just putting it out there, but you're not grasping the hand that's coming out to say, I'm interested. And 2 weeks down the line, it's almost too late, which was the case we were looking at. So these two things have got to go hand in hand with this one, which is having some kind of coordination group. I say management here, don't be put off by the term, but some way of kind of keeping you on track. Because a lot of small organizations, I find, one person's doing the content alongside a lot of their other jobs, be it finance, be it bid writing, be it delivery of projects. You often need a helping hand. You need other people to input. It needs some management input to help you. You could have some service user input. I think it's really important. If you seek to engage people, actually ask some people, what do you think of this? What do you think of these images? What do you think of these words? People like being asked, and they'll probably tell you. I know we've got a session coming up on market research, which could kind of help you with some of those aspects there. But these three things, having a management coordination group and resourcing both production and engagement, you could wrap these into content hour, content day, if I'm being ambitious, because people always say, well, how long is it going to, how long do I need to be putting into this? And that really depends on how many audiences you're seeking to engage. and what you're seeking to do. I have a client at the moment that's looking to raise £300,000. You know, they need to put a bit more time in. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. So, you know, for a typical small organisation, my answer to that is, you know, if you've got a few staff, a couple of staffs and some volunteers, somebody needs to be doing all of what we talked about, those 6 channels. It needs to be half a day a week, 2 a day. This is ideal world. Much less than this, you're going to struggle to do content and engagement and kind of think about what you want to go and do the monitoring, because these are all critical to your success. And then underpinning that, pulling all of this together and more, is a simple plan, a one-pager actually. I'm seeing that to good effect, and quite simply, people that don't plan actually just aren't typically successful from an engagement point of view. They kind of meander around. People that have a plan use it in an active way and actually are driven to kind of think, who are our key audiences? What's our objectives? What are we seeking to achieve here? So the last bit of content I'm going to give you is around that. And it's 2 parts of a one-page plan. So just have a little bit of refreshment there. For visual purposes, I'll split it into 2. At the top end, and this is what you would do first with your plan, is to take your overall objectives as an organisation. So basically, what is it we need to achieve in the next 12 months or so? It could be, you know, increase the number of service users in our centre, or, you know, recruit more people from a ethnic minority background, or whatever it might be. These might be kind of existing objectives. So when I work with people, you know, people often say, oh yeah, in our business plan, often people say, well, we don't have a plan. Okay. Well, that could be an issue in itself, but, you know, for these purposes, what is it you're seeking to do? You know, is it increase funds? Are you looking to raise money? Or what are you seeking to do? This will inform your marketing objectives, which will then typically be about some of the things we talked about. So it could be, you know, things like increase the audience reach of our Facebook content, and something you can kind of baseline and measure. It could be, you know, build a mailing list of our service users. These are the kind of marketing objectives, quite specific in terms of helping you drive these aspects forward. We touched on the audiences before. These do need to be detailed in terms of, you know, and it helps to prioritize. When I'm working with clients, I often do, well, actually, which is number 1, which is that if you don't do anything one week, but this thing, who's the key audience, you know, and it helps people prioritize. Sometimes the list is long, and that, you know, needs a bit of thought how you can do that. The investment is usually people's time. So who is going to do it, and you know, what they're going to do. But, you know, you're going to probably need some budget. So Facebook ads need some budget, not masses, depending on what you're going to do, but it needs something. It could be something. I'm working with an organisation who's got another round of funding from a funder to do some work around community safety again. It worked very well, and the funder says, yes, we like that. You know, we gave you some money to engage an audience. You used Facebook. You told us all the data. We loved it. We'd like to give you some more. So there are people out there that will fund this work. So don't worry too much about it. There are people that will do it. And I think funders are getting more wise to the fact that these tools are really useful to help you deliver a project. So those are kind of key questions. And you'd use this one pager, you know, as a part of a process, you know, so yeah, you can write it yourself, but, you know, use it to talk to, you know, service users or your trustees or both, or partners, agencies. You know, it's a discussion tool. It's a live document. And then the bottom bit here is really getting down to the detail. So exactly what are you going to do? Who's going to do it? And encourage people to kind of think, well, who else actually has a role here? It's not usually, doesn't necessarily need to be down to one person. You've got to actually think, actually how does other people support that process? And they usually got a role. But this is kind of the detail here. So one pager, ideally. Some people develop one, if you've got very distinct services. I've certainly worked with people who've had 3 of them. So they have one for each service because the audience will be different and the objectives will be different. That's fine. And if you've got slightly bigger and got different members of staff, that's how they did it. So chief officer kind of had an overview and then each kind of service manager kind of owned the plan. That's quite a nice little model if you're a bit bigger. And I'm quite happy for people to have the document as well. Salim, if people want that one pager. It helps. I mean, as often I use it as a consultant, it helps for an external input, certainly, but you can DIY as well. So, how are we doing for time? Okay. I mean, this was a little exercise. There's a couple here. I think what we might do is you can have these tasks, by all means, kind of bring them into the Q&A. But I think what I might do, Salim, is actually hand back to you to kind of handle that bit. So we've probably got about 15 minutes, which is probably, we want to kind of go over to kind of Q&A. So let's do that. Okay. To the admin side. Right. So
Okay.
let's stop share.
Okay. Jonathan, thank you very much for that. Can you hear me okay, Jonathan? Yeah. You're on mute.
I can hear you.
Perfect. We can hear you now as well. Thank you very much for that. So there's a lot of information that Jonathan has just shared there. Some of that information will be quite important in the respect that we're already doing it. Some of the information we know about, but we may not be doing it. But the idea of this workshop is really to give you an overview. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it's all about trying to see how we can develop capacity within our organization, irrespective of what the size of our organization is, irrespective of our audience is. Over the next coming weeks and a couple of months, and as Jonathan's mentioned, we are going to be doing more workshops, and these will be further exploring some of these strategies and some of these ideas that have been shared with you today. We've decided to split the workshops into 3 separate categories. And the 3 categories include, the very first one is around user experience. And this is kicked off about user experience. Understanding user experience is absolutely critical. It's the relationship that we have with our users and the relationship users have with us. How do we nurture that? How do we develop that? How do we encourage that? How do we grow that? So all about understanding the user experience within the digital world. The next few workshops are going to be based around transforming delivery. Okay, so you've engaged with your learner, your service user, whoever they may be, but how then do you actually engage with them through delivering your services? And we're going to look at how we need to develop ourselves by transforming the delivery. Most of our delivery from the organizations I know prior to lockdown, including ours, was all face-to-face. Very little was done remotely, purely because of the nature of the learners we had. Lockdown came, everything went online. And we struggled, users struggled, it just suddenly happened. Those who succeeded and sustained themselves have done a very good job, but now we've got to look at, now that it's going back to some face-to-face delivery, how do we have this blended approach? So we're then going to focus on looking at transforming our delivery, and that's looking at content and things like that. The last bit that Jonathan mentioned is looking at planning your organisation's future. So it's giving some important workshops on how we can plan for the future rather than being knee jerk. How can we do a strategy for planning all this? So within today's workshop, the one thing I took away or I take away from here is all about the relationships, and I think it's absolutely pivotal our relationships we have and how we nurture it. So what I'd like to do is just open up to yourselves. If you have questions, if you have any thoughts, be good, bad, negative, positive, whatever it may be, it's an open forum, and we're here for you, particularly Jonathan, who's got more experience than I have. But by all means, if you've got any questions, feel free to either put them in the chat or just simply unmute and have a conversation. We don't need to be shy about this now.
I think somebody's waving.
Okay. I can't quite see that, Jonathan. Can you help me out?
Shaba? I think if you want to, she's waving. If you want to take yourself off mute, and can't hear you. You're muted. If you unmute your, let me.
No, I thought I'd taken myself off it. Don't worry.
There you
Sorry,
are.
my mistake. Now,
Okay.
I am interested in this whole thing of creating a website because we're an organization that's developed by stealthily rather than explosion. You know, we haven't come on the scene as an explosion. We've come on the scene gradually, if you know what I mean, over years, over a while, and I think we are at the stage now where our work is we need to strategize a bit about in terms of all the things that you've been saying, and we haven't got a website at the minute, and part of the issue is trying to find somebody who would do a good one, but also funding it. And you were saying that there were funders who might be interested. I mean, this is something I am certainly interested in, because that's the stage at which we're at. I think we need a good website, and we need to do all those things, have links to all the various activities that we do, and to make sure that it's more public up front rather than, because a lot of the work that we've been doing stuff with doing advocacy type work, sort of in the area of family law. And a lot of it has been confidential, really, and quite had to be low profile by the nature of what we were doing. We were looking at forced marriages and domestic abuse and all these kind of things within the Asian community. So it left us quite vulnerable as an organization as well. And I think that now we're slightly changing our emphasis. That's still part of what we're doing, but we're doing other things. And I think that's what we need to get across. And we need to be able to have the facility for a blog. So not everybody will want to come and will want to talk stuff. So there are people who, so it's what the website does, the versatility of it as well is concerning me, and we need to be able to have somebody who can do it properly.
Okay, there's a lot
any
of
suggestions welcome, and any suggestions about money welcome as well. In other words,
sure,
yeah.
Sure. Let me come back on that. Really interesting. Thanks for that. So my starting point with web design, web development is you don't need to be spending vast amounts of money. So this is an area that's really kind of developed over the last 5 to 10 years. There are now really good web builders, that we would call them. Things like Wix. There's one called Weebly. there's quite a few. GoDaddy have one, which is actually quite good. These are tools that help somebody with less experience or no experience to pull a website together. Actually, in terms of cash, some of them offer a free version, which could, or a lower budget version. So you can think about hundreds of pounds rather than thousands of pounds. That's my, I still hear people saying, "Oh, I've spent X amount of thousand on."
The thousands of pounds was scaring me a lot. So I mean, I'm thinking in terms of hundreds of pounds or free, as you say.
Free, people like free, of course, and you know what, you can you can do that, and I've seen them work perfectly well. I've seen people use a free website that has the provider name within the domain name, and some people get put off by that, but actually they work. So I mean, if you've got virtually very small to no budget, you can still produce a website. So that's the starting point. You can do it. I think in terms of funders, one that I work with and have done for 6-7 years is Lloyds Bank Foundation, who fund work, small charities up to £1 million turnover, so I mean, small to medium, really, I would suggest, who will fund work in terms of some of the things you were talking about, Mashuba, about domestic abuse, violence. I'm working with charities doing that, homelessness, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. So they're one funder who will fund somebody like me to help a charity. So my starting point is people can do it yourself, and I would say jump on one of those builds and have, but there, I do recognise some people need a helping hand just to get your confidence and show you how to do it.
Exactly. Who knows what they're doing?
Yeah,
great.
Because you can spend if you haven't got a total clue about what you're doing, you've got good ideas, but you're not necessarily going to achieve what you want. And as your research shows, which is actually spot on true, is that the website is quite effective in terms of a marketing device. So it's quite important, really.
Yeah.
What we can do,
what
Nishaba,
you do. Huh?
Nishaba, what we can do is after this, we will send you some of those links of the tools that Jonathan's mentioned in terms of Wix.
Fantastic. That's what I'm looking for now.
Yeah. So we will send you that, and that will be a start. And then later on, we can look at developing maybe from there, looking at maybe funding, which is always a longer option.
Because I think this is, as you say, maybe a few £100 or whatever, but with one of the free ones. But even the free ones, you can't always manipulate them properly. You don't, unless you know what you're doing.
Absolutely. So I'm just conscious of time, and I just want to move on. Is there?
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, you do that. Grateful.
It's a really important point because we're all at different stages. Some of us are still setting out ourselves into the social media market, into the digital world. Others are much more established. So this is the beauty of having a forum like this. Does anybody else wants to raise any question or want to comment on anything, or even share some good tips about what they've done, how they set out?
We actually use Facebook and WhatsApp a lot during all the lockdown period, and it really worked to keep our networks going and to keep people's spirits up and all this kind of stuff. So that can be quite effective.
That's amazing.
People come on, they don't have to use their own name, but
Absolutely. And it's like I say, it's all about relationships, building those relationships, and you know better than anyone else, as does everybody in this room, how best to nurture that relationship and keep in touch. Just conscious of time, does anybody else have any burning question? No, that's no problem at all. Anything that anybody would like to raise about this particular issue or topic, or anything that you'd like to see in the future in terms of workshops? We have got a full directory lined up. but is there anything else related to this that perhaps you're working on? It may be a small project. You may not know where to start, or you've already started and you want more encouragement. Anything at all you want to comment on? Feel free.
Yeah, no questions too basic or too advanced. Doesn't mean I'll be able to answer them, but if you've got something, yeah, as Salim said, if you already got everything up and running, and have hit a problem, or you're not quite sure, that's fine as well. Fire away.
I see Molly's raised her hand. Molly,
thank you. I've just got a quick question, because I'm sort of not really very confident in social media and the right language to use that's suitably informal but is also appropriate, and I wondered if you could just point me in the right direction of a place where I could get some sort of ideas or some advice.
Sure. Okay. Molly, just tell me a little bit about what's the audience or audiences you're working with. Yeah.
Right. Well, I work with parent volunteers. So the idea is to recruit parents as volunteers to help make the community a better place. So coming together to organise groups and activities that they feel are needed in the community. So you need to reach out to busy parents in an engaging way with the right sort of wording. So I'm just thinking about crafting the content and getting the tone just right, because it's easy to come across as a bit boring and institutional. But on the other hand, you don't want to be too informal. So it's probably just me and the fact that I'm just not very confident with this. But any tips or hints or places to go to get information, I'd be so grateful for, please.
Okay, no problem. And what platforms are you using at the moment, Molly? What are you using?
Well, we use WhatsApp groups. We also have a Facebook page, sort of a corporate one with an offshoot that we can use to post. And we started off really well with this in the lockdown, but now it's sort of fallen to me to reinvigorate its use. And I'm thinking I could really do with some sort of digital media training, I think, to just have the confidence in updating things effectively, to engage and get a response.
Okay, sure. Thanks for that. I think what I'm picking up is you're not alone. Actually, what's happened is that people, when we had no option in terms of, we were all at home, and we're kind of thinking, how do we keep the show on the road in some form? Everyone was more or less at home in front of a PC, or more like their smartphone. So, the audience has increased massively. And what we've seen as things have kind of changed going forward, everyone's seen a decline to some point. So I would say don't be over concerned with that. From an engagement point of view, it's about the visuals. It is absolutely key. So in terms of getting people to stop and look, it's about good visuals. It's not the word on social media. That's absolutely key. So this is quite a tough process, because I've seen sort of neurological science at work in this, in a test, that the average human brain has a remarkable aptitude to remember an image that it's seen. So when you come to communication and engaging, when most of us have seen an image, we think, I've seen that, I know what it's about, and you don't stop. So it makes this work is very image hungry. So you use an image, and more or less, for a post, and then it's kind of done, because if you keep using it, you'll find your engagement will slump, because people just they go on by, they don't stop. You're looking for content that stops the thumb, typically, from scrolling. That's the key thing, and it's the visual that does that. In terms of wording on social media, and websites and email. The trend is very much to less wording. So a typical good Facebook post is probably down to 2 lines of text. What you don't want is the little link from see more, because people don't click on it. Very, very few people click on that.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Salim, I was going to say, if anybody wants to contact, on specifics, like, can you look at this? What do you think of my email? What do you think of my website? Or I've got this draft post. I'm quite happy through yourself to give people, a feedback on something like that. And quite, at no cost, Salim, I'm quite happy to kind of, do that.
I hope you realise what you're letting yourself in for, because this audience is very demanding.
It's okay.
That's great.
I'll do a one-off. I'm not going to say I'm going to do a full appraisal of a website, but I'll certainly happily look at something and give people some bullet points.
Sure. And this is the whole idea. I think the thing you mentioned, Molly, is something that is always on the critical part of lots of people's fingertips as well. It's not a big sell, but the next session we're doing is all about understanding your client's needs and the impact you have on that as well. And so there are lots of little stages. We're literally holding hands as we going along. So you're on the circulation list. I will send out the details for everybody as well for the next workshop. But it might be worthwhile just continuing on with some of these workshops and hopefully build up your knowledge as we go along as well. I'd just like to say a big thank you to Jonathan, and most importantly for all of you participants for taking out the time for what's a very busy time with everybody, but it's also a very, very important topic area. So you do have my contact details. Jonathan's I'll also give you in the follow-up email if you want to contact Jonathan directly, but you do continue to contact us with any queries around there. But I'd just like to say a big thank you to everybody, and we are going to stop the workshop now, and I'm going to end the recording as well. So thank you once more, and have yourselves a lovely day as well.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.